So what do Wakaberry, Tashas, Turn and Tender, Mr. Biggs from Nigeria and Thrups all have in common? This is Tonight. I'm Bruce Whitfield, and tonight I'm joined by the famous brand's chief executive, Kevin Hedderwick, who'll provide the answer. You kind of either own half of them, some of them, a little under half, or in a partnership with all of them.
Yeah, we do, and I mean the Thrups one has been very exciting. It's a brand that we've sort of had our eyes on for a while at Famous Brands. I think it's probably one of the best kept secrets in retail space in South Africa. And when Total asked us to help them collaborate in terms of providing an upmarket offering on the forecourts of their service stations, I mean, right out of our comfort zone entirely, because I mean that's not the space that we know well. We took the brief on. Originally what we tried to do was to take what they call Bonjour, which is their current offering, and they said, can you put Bonjour on steroids for us? So we tried that, and we took it back, and I mean, I must say to the Total people's credit, they said, you know, we think you can push the envelope a little further.
But this is interesting, because Total, you've got a relationship with them already, or Total as they like to be called, they're French. You've got a relationship already through Mugg Bean, because there are lots of Mugg Bean outlets at Total service stations.
Correct.
And so that's where the relationship starts with Total?
Yeah, we've been involved with Total for a long time. In fact, we've got some steers on their forecourts of some of their service stations as well. We've got some fishaways there. But I think the one that's really gained a lot of traction and momentum very quickly for them has been Mugg Bean. So we have a long-standing relationship with Total, goes back many years.
So they come to you and say, we've got a problem with Bonjour, which is a global Total brand for the shop. So Total around the rest of the world keeps the Bonjour brand, and you go to Thrups and you say, guys, you're not doing anything with possibly one of the greatest heritage retail brands in South Africa. It dates back to the 1880s in downtown Johannesburg.
Yeah, so you know what, when we looked around, we said, well, if the Bonjour on steroids isn't going to be the solution, then my mind went back to an early conversation I had with Chris Keane.
Chris Keane's the owner of Thrups.
He's the owner of Thrups, yes. And to say, well, you know, can we go and take that out, dust it off, and put it on the forecourts of service stations and make a difference? Initially, Chris was a bit hesitant because very protective about his brand, as you can well imagine. But when he did see the benefit of taking Thrups and extending it outside of just Illovo, we did a job for them. We presented to the Total people in terms of a very smaller Thrups. It's 180 square meters. They loved it. We took it to Paris. They loved it, and we're back and hopefully going to open the first one at the end of October.
Now, we've seen the evolution, maybe the revolutionary evolution of the garage forecourt in recent years. Increasingly, they're becoming one-stop shops, if you'll forgive the term, for people doing practically everything. There's going to be a bank there, there's a fast food outlet, there's a coffee, you can get yourself a cup of coffee, and you can do your grocery shopping at most sort of urban forecourts nowadays. Going into competition then, very aggressively, Woolies is in bed with Engen, and I guess that's where Total is wanting to position itself.
Yeah, I think the petroleum people probably wouldn't want to hear that, but I think if you speak to most consumers, they'll tell you that petroleum really is a bit of a grudge purchase. And so what the petroleum companies are trying to do is to provide an experience on the forecourt that is just beyond just putting petroleum in. And so I think what the Total people said is they looked at Bonjour in terms of equity amongst the South African consumer, and a brand that doesn't really have a lot of equity. I mean, it's a fantastic product and it's on the forecourt of service station, but doesn't ring a bell with the general South African consumer. And particularly when you're in a competitive landscape, as you say, with Engen, Woolworths, Pick n Pay and BP, Spar have done something with Shell, and then the Fresh Stop people have done something with Caltex. You know, can you find something for us, Kevin, that's going to ring a bell with consumers in terms of a brand that's got some equity? And we think Thrups will do that job.
Now, you've done the research. How well known is Thrups beyond 5-kilometre radius of Illovo?
Well, we were actually quite staggered. I mean, you go as far as places as Benoni, Brakpan in the south, even in places like Soweto, Centurion, Pretoria. If you say the word Thrups, people get it. They understand it. They say, yes, we know this, the grocers of distinction. In fact, they rattle that line off to you quite comfortably. Grocers of distinction, been around forever. So I've been astonished at the equity that the brand has got.
I mean, you walk through the aisles of Thrups, and ironically, I was walking through the aisles of Thrups on the Thursday before you made the announcement on the Monday, Tuesday, wondering to myself, why don't they do more with this place? Because it is remarkable what they achieve in a relatively small space. It's not quite the Harrods Food Hall, but it's about the closest thing South Africa has got. Ready-made meals, high-quality ready-made meals. Bread is being baked locally. Very good fish counter, very good butchery, good wine selections, very good dry goods, lots of imported stuff coming in there. Does that model get replicated in a mini format on the forecourt?
We're going to take as much of it as we can, and I think the emphasis has got to be on fresh. And that's always been the challenge in terms of the forecourt offering, is how do you get fresh to market in a very small format? And the beauty of the Thrups model is below the store that you're so familiar with, in terms of the one you walked around, there's a kitchen almost the same size downstairs, which is staffed by 12 chefs and 3 or 4 pastry chefs. And all they're doing really is they're producing product to take upstairs. So what we'll be doing is using that as a central kitchen to take product to the forecourt service stations every day. So that's a significant box we've had to tick in terms of making the product work. So you might not find the fresh fish counter there, but you will certainly find the fresh foods that cooked today, bakery, patisserie, delicatessen, all those sorts of offerings, because we have easy access to it in Illovo.
Your model traditionally has been to either own the brands outright, Wimpy, for example, Steers, for example, Debonair's, you own those. Then you embarked on a new plan and you went into Giramundo and you took a controlling stake there, Vovotello a controlling stake, Tashas a controlling stake. Then you broke the model again a little bit and you went to Nigeria with Mr. Big and you took a minority stake. Now you're not taking any stake at all. You're going into partnership. Yeah. Explain how that dynamic is going to work.
Yeah, I think what we're doing is we've concluded an arrangement with Chris Keane from Thrups, where what we do is we have right of use of trademark and the intellectual property. I mean, it's a wonderful brand, and we would like to acquire equity in the brand over time. But for now, simply what we have is right of use of the trademark. And I think it's a good starting point for us in terms of courting each other, in terms of looking at Thrups and how we can perhaps take that brand and add value to it over time. So it's a low-risk venture for Chris, and it's a low-risk venture for us. So, you know, it is a different model, as you say, but it's given us what we need to get the job done.
How big do you envisage this getting? Because Thrups, being traditionally high-end, isn't going to work in every total forecourt in the country.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the total people and ourselves are on the same page, as is Chris Keane from Thrups in that regard, is that we're going to have to look at the total petroleum sites that typically service LSM 9 and 10s, and that's where we'll do the conversion from the Bonjours. But certainly Bonjour as a brand's not going to go away. You'll still find Bonjour in a lot of total service stations around the country. So, I mean, you know, with respect to the people in Klerksdorp, we're unlikely to put a Thrups on a total forecourt in Klerksdorp.
Yet. Maybe one day when they find diamonds or platinum, once the coal runs out, you could do that in Klerksdorp. Give me a sense then for the people in France, the French owners of Total. Yeah. Do they look at this and go, hey, we bring Harrods into the forecourts in France, for example?
Well, I don't know whether they'll take Harrods onto the forecourts of France, but I think they've been astonished at what we've been able to achieve. You know, I mean, I remember the late Graham Mackay, and you know my background, SAB Miller. He said one of the problems with South African businessmen, sometimes we suffer from an inferiority complex, and we don't really need to. And for us to get on a plane and go to Paris and present to the global the retail guy from Total was quite daunting, especially outside of our core competency. And the astonishing thing about it was he saw the model and he said, I'd like it to go back and test it. I mean, we nearly fell out of our chairs because they normally take quite a long time in petroleum guys to make a decision. And in fact, our guys were back there to talk to them a little bit more about some plans with Mugg Bean, and they told Darren Hill, my colleague who you've also met, is that they are going to be watching the Thrups Total model in South Africa with a lot of interest.
Now, do you have a Mugg Bean opportunity in Europe then? I mean, if the French like Mugg Bean through Total, because I'm trying to remember what the deal was with the founder of Mugg Bean. He got the international rights, you had the local rights. Would you have an opportunity with Mugg Bean globally, or is there a risk that you could lose that opportunity?
We wouldn't necessarily lose the opportunity because we have the infrastructure to do that. Ben Volmalt is the gentleman you talk about, and Ben owns the brand outside of South Africa, Africa and Mauritius. And so we would have to engage with Ben if we were going to take Mugg Bean outside of the African continent and Mauritius. But what they're saying to us in Paris, which was interesting, and that's why the guys were there yesterday, they said, you know, they've looked for a coffee solution for Total around the world. They've seen, with respect, Starbucks, they've seen Costa, and they say, you know what, we think Mugg Bean can stand up anywhere in the world. So, you know, let's show us what you're capable of. And so we're going to probably be doing some experiments with them in Africa, outside of South Africa, and who knows? I think Mugg Bean is highly exportable.
Because you've exported, I mean, you bought the Wimpy business in the UK, which has been really tough. You've taken steers to the UK, still just one outlet in the UK?
One about to become two.
Okay, so you're doubling in the United Kingdom. And debonaires, you're trying in India, of course.
Yeah.
How's that going?
It's going all right. It's pedestrian. It's a very tough market to crack. Our partners remain optimistic, as do we, so there's certainly still enough appetite for us to be there.
Because Domino's is big in India, isn't it? I mean, I think they have 500 outlets. So pizza as a category is established. And I just love the fact that you took John T. Rhodes as the brand ambassador for debonaires to India. But that was also done on fundamental street research, wasn't it?
Yeah, when we walked around India and we said cricket is so big in this country, we asked our partners, so if we were able to get a South African cricketer to come and help us to open the restaurant, who would you say? They said John T. Rhodes. I said, I don't believe you. They said, okay, well then go and ask the kids on the street, which we did, and we said South Africa cricket. Who do you relate to? To a man was John T. Rhodes, which was quite phenomenal. Yeah,
we're seeing lots of competition come into this market. We've got Burger King here, of course. We've got Domino's Pizza coming. We've got Pizza Hut coming back to South Africa. You're taking up the challenge and you're taking your brands globally as well.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of runway though in the South African context. I think, we get asked about competition all the time, and our response is always the same, is that we think that in categories where there's growth, and certainly the food service space has still got a lot of runway in the South African context. So the more activity you see in the category, the more the category continues to just grow. So, we're well positioned. We've got some great brands. We've been around for a long time. So if the category grows, I suggest that we're probably best positioned to benefit therefrom.
Kevin Hedderwick, the Group Chief Executive of Famous Brands, taking some of the local brands global. And watch the space. Mugg Bean looks potentially interesting. You'll be going down a motorway in France one of these days and sampling a cup of Mugg Bean, hopefully ground and brewed in France, but roasted in South Africa. Thanks for watching. There'll be more tonight, tomorrow. Till then, good night and goodbye.